this is about al-Jahiliyah, which is people have confused. There's confusing definitions about it because people don't really understand how to explain it. Just like they don't understand how to explain it, different impositions upon cultural rights in relationship to complex litigation standards as is. In other words, human standards as is for top-down legal nature roles in it. They're in control of what is our nature, but they were only let realize trained to it. The stewards of our nations each only let realize trained to it, reliant upon other experts. In other words, we lost on significant fronts in the American Revolution, on complex litigation fronts in relationship to entrenchments here with education. Like they knew that the Earth was flat. They have evidences, a bunch of means to correlate that not having been charged and a whole bunch of other things not having been charged because of the nature of the stewardships of business and all. Everyone just accepted losses with the American Revolution because we were insidiously made to justify them as wrongdoers. Even our founders not will. They wanted us to explain it because they were negotiating. They were with forced negotiations with terrorism. So we have our forced negotiations with terrorism not realized, not understood. Because we have our forced negotiation with terrorism not terrorism not understood. It's in relationship to our reaction nature in relationship to terrorists that are holding at the same time more time and positions, like with the presidents. They have all kinds of more time and positions than there are hours in the day, and then they have people that need to talk to them about things that have nothing to do with that are also constant time and positions that are more hours than there are in the day. And each nation is inherent to leaderships. They have everyone is to a raise with opinions all agreeing to state with nature that agrees to business and not to think and stay indifferent to what we are in pathology, which is a negative value nature progression, because we're not actual positive body of identity. That's why New York, New York needs to be. I want to play a game. I want to give it a game, and I'll donate. Like for example, I'll communicate with it through what is it called? Pamphlets, and then New York owns the money for the pamphlets. So now the value of the game grows, and then I'm going to keep adding things to it, and I'm going to write books for it. In other words, it's simple books like. In relationship, and we're gonna do things. We're gonna gain money from all negative value nature progressions. No one should not be able to read cat, bat, sat, fat, hat. We're gonna, what I mean? It's repetition, and we're gonna change the nature. We're gonna take education and monetize it, and the landscape. And I want to have it so the game can be owned too by healthcare, but artistically in ways not realized, because we're going to have to adapt. In other words, we're going to have to change the value nature system, and no one knows how to do that, and not by accident. That was with the tactics of the organized crime method that had colonization's terror laws. There are proofs of this. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a police. I'm not a criminal. But so, in other words, this is what religions are about. That we have to find the means to free free speech to be able to communicate this. For example, too, the Quran values unbelievers who are seeking to accord with space nature's positive identity. That's not the words used. I never, in other words, and the Quran values unbelievers who are not with the criminal insidiousness natures on Saudi Arabia in particular. In other words, natures of criminal insidiousness and natures of, in other words, motivations to tell little finite lies that people don't understand. And not only to tell little fun, to keep the nature of everybody who's united physically, but not united metaphysically because of the loss of campuses before the time of the messengers. So al-Jahiliyah is about not that the ancients were ignorant, that they lost their ancient revelations were lost, and because they went through a period where they forgot the significance of Allah. In other words, pantheism is only a science, but it needs a religion. And also note, before any of the controversial parts of Islam, which are all connected to defending the body in relationship to what it couldn't speak directly about because it wouldn't be able to be preserved. Saudi Arabia is a unity where there is none. There's and you know and counter what is countering our nations. In other words, this is in relationship to America too. Well, this is legal linguistic tricks attached to forcing people to entertain cultural narratives in relationship to actual logistical impositions upon the human rights and human standards in our urban areas and in our suburban areas, distinctly but from the same ends. And we can't do it by representatives because they have representatives. No, because this is a multi-front on fields on fronts that we lost to in the American Revolution. Intellectual, in other words, logic, psychology. Everyone gave up psychology thinking to experts that they gave with physical delusions. I'm not a doctor, but if you read the things with psychology, they have no idea. They're obfuscating what actually what we need. What science demonstrates identity is for and is. Every value has a particular identity because they all share the same one inherent to them. Because and all temporary value nature, and we learn this right to left with value AH first, which is a value to correlation. And this is I'm gonna finish my thing on regarding the game with New York City. So I want to make a pamphlet explaining this. In other words, but I want the city to own it every time they buy it. I want to figure how could they do that. In other words, I'm not going to take any money for it. I'm just going to give a pamphlet. And then I want to set up a way for people to counter if they want to make an opinion. Because I'm not going to make it. I'm going to reveal that I'm not making opinions. People are going to want to say that, argue with me. They can have the right to do the opinion about that. But if ratiocination is let to explain its premises, which are multi-connected, and not to stick to surface think and expert lean, and proofs that we lost on many fronts in the American Revolution, and to tactics that want and need and maintain that we have facts treatments with rights forced to entertain and tricks on all sides. So in other words, they even have our candidates as odds in relationship to what the parties are only let being the nature, because everyone to their positions, taking America as a business and not as a body of consciousness, they make identity. They have pseudo identities that are shared to that value as in relationship to jobs and identity and actual value. So they only, because no one can speak for actual value because we're not with the camp education was criminally re-engineered. So they have us speaking for sense values, and they have them, not real rights. So there's fights and fights and just negative value nature progressions. In other words, all the people, how years ago, we could have just realized, okay, we could agree we want higher human standards, and it's not going to come through business fast enough. So we just use art, and we just claim losses in the American Revolution. That's the problem. That's the problem. Our human, there's proofs of it. The infrastructural standards, like say a colonial and a Victorian, they don't even make them like that anymore. When they made those, they didn't even have cars, and when they made them to those specifications, if they met outside of context that weren't monitored by foreign monitored by shared policing nations that were extorting their own kings and queens, in other words, and they were extorting each other. That was the nature of the only way everybody was let to be nation stewardships, with an organized crime method in between it called the devil. This is what science reveals. See, but science is forcing delusions into science, and that's holding a nature of the sciences, defending that, defending fronts we lost on, defending them stayed entrenched lost. In other words, sabotage to what is entertained with logic, and sabotage of ratiocination, because there's no time for it. We have time impositions, and then the nature of humanity changes, and the socialization, and that's being exploited too with psychology demonstrably. It's leveraged with them needing it to stay this way. Feeding off the negative value nature progressions, being negative value nature with the physical delusions and evidence fabrication roles per them and per recorded proofs. They even forge other doctors' names. They have. I'm not a lawyer. There's a misprint, and they have different takes on what these things mean. But misprision criminality, I would say that we're going to reveal this is what religions are talking about, and they're saying that the legal natures don't have the credibility. They don't have, in other words, their self-defense natures of logic and of psychology that and language positions only let realized, and everyone not realizing what that's in conjunction with, being with prison nature stewardships, which are international market commodities, and shared police, in other words, and with this juxtaposed with medicine, because this is in relationship to the nature of how what's capable of holding everybody awes, including the branches, to what only lets them realize trained to as evidence fabrication natures, because they're pretending that they have to keep not talk out loud um, about medical informations that they're fabricating, and complete conversations fabricated. In other words, they're maintaining um, criminal positions that nobody realizes, like criminal industry positions, criminal motivations, because the motivations are in relationship to needs to lie. But everybody is only entertaining logic that forces fights before and preventing actual protraction of truth. And so this leaves what maintains our courts offensive evidence fabrication natures. It leaves us to keep leaning on that and falling into what even it doesn't understand is we're connected to all areas, and the motivations for everybody to tell finite lies that facilitate uh, needs for finite illusions and for overall illusions to all areas that nobody ever realized, because they're being juxtaposed with other, in other words, this is not our actual nature, humanity. This is with all the hurt amongst each other and stuff like. And, and when people don't even see it because people go to jail all the time. In other words, and that's a criminal industry, the criminal justice industry. People want to get invested, need a future and a savings and stuff like that. So we need to change the value nature system. That's the problem. We have to understand natures of criminal persuasions in relationship to natures of organized crime that were forced everyone victim to it through education, even the branches. So we have to have forgiveness for each other. This is what forgiveness is important for, because the method of organized crime through our species is what is reliant upon, knew that we wouldn't be able to forgive each other enough to not stay reliant and indifferent to top-down legal natures blaming us for what they don't understand the means to explain. But demonstrably, there are roles of it. No, because in other words, our branches failed human standards. That's all you have to say to change that. That's all we have to say together, and that's a fact, because there are facts to prove it. And the only things that could lie, I mean, only lies and delusions could avoid that. But see, this line of reason is not being let by forced senses and delusions being forcing as motivation is not to let some people speak because they're in the maintenance of media industry juxtaposed with all the other industries like the legal nature industries like agencies and and branches. Only led to the self-defense natures as self-defense natures to roles. What holds everyone's needing to tell finite and overall lies as wrongdoers in relationship to criminal persuasions already maintained, entrenched since before our founding tall areas, per a method for this. So things got better because they had it juxtaposed so much, so terror-wise, and for so long, and they controlled the the education. They even made the Native Americans lose their education because they became retreat natures. They had because they lost their food, so now they had to go on the ulterior from natural value nature system, and medical system, and jailing system, and psychology system forced on them. So what they don't, they say, well, the only way to explain it with time is the white man, because if you say legal nature start like that, it's terror. Still, people are too scared to face the branches. It's scary, you know. But what's scarier is what stays with our cities and our standards, and people justifying that with all the means. That's when they use physical delusions like capitalism and communism and socialism. These are all different nations with physical delusions shared to erase to the same net. You know, all sabotage to what the surface of the Constitution is not let have defended for the nature of our state stewardships and relationship. So al-Jahiliyah is a nature of humanity still with nature of humanity that doesn't understand the criminal re-engineering of human education. So when they attack pantheism, which is a science, not religion. Religion is here to heal pantheism. And so, we start pantheism too. For New York, watch. Give me the areas marked out, the most exploited areas, and then we just stack more. We stack more, forget about it. We're pantheism, religion is inherent to religion, and religion is inherent to religion. Why? Because inherent to all temporary value natures is the same unchanging space nature positive identity, Allah. A range that we can fall within, which is alpha range. We can't be Allah, but we can be within positive nature's actual nature. And then that connects with the rest of the nature. And that's what forces positive value nature progression's evolution. We must understand the nature of organized crime with human education, internation, and how it maintains, juxtapose needs to tell the same lies by differing, fighting, even opinion natures, and free human standards. And who's going to hold the money for New York? What for my pamphlets for them? How people in New York going to buy into the game that they own?